Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to episode 94 of the Wise Guy Sports Show. I am one of your hosts. I am Mike Martinez, the Big Rican on Sports, and wasting no time because we have so much to get into tonight. I am going to bring in my co host, Mr. JC Blue Note himself, Jim Cerniti. And James, from the attire I have on, I think we pretty well know what the big topic of the evening is. As today at noon, the first ever 12-team college football playoff seeding and bracket was announced. And some surprises, I think, as far as seeding goes. I don't think anybody was surprised at the teams that got it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get started. But how you doing tonight? It's our second to last show of the year, man.
A little nostalgic, feeling pretty good that it's our second to last show, but at the same time, it's like it's our second to last show.
It's going to be our last actual content show because this time next week, we're really not going to talk sports at all. I mean, there's not going to be our first bowl games are going to be happening next weekend. The first one I want to say takes place on Sunday night. We'll talk all about that in the second part of the hat trick tonight. We're going to have NBA regular season, NHL regular season. At this point, in the year, it's not going to make or break anything. We've got NFL teams. We'll talk about at some point tonight, some teams getting eliminated, some teams clinching. But realistically, this is like the last content show that we've got in 2024.
Which is scary to me because, we talked when Zachary was on how we didn't have many OTRs this year. We really didn't. We have been are we trying to be more mature, James? Is that what it is? Or is
I think we've got them, but they were more in the back half of the year.
Yeah. I will give you that. I know you will work your magic on the OTRs that we will play next week and laugh our faces off at. But we've got to get the I've got an idea and I want to float it to you on the air. So you remember, was it a couple weeks ago we heard Bobby's toy go off and go mail time?
Yeah.
We should make an email for the show, and if we get one, do something like that with the mailbox from Blue's Clues.
I was just gonna think, it's like, would it be worth the copyright strike to be able to hear the mail song?
I know the mail song.
I know the mail song too, and I'm trying not to sing it right now because it's so friggin' catchy.
It really is. So speaking of catchy, dude, let's get into it. So we're not up all night. Let's do this thing. Let's get in the hat trick.
It's the three biggest topics in the world of sports from the last week. Get ready for the Wise Guys hat trick.
And topic number one is the biggest thing in the entire sports world right now, and that is the first ever 12-team college football playoff pairings came out today. And here is the first surprise. That is not for power conference champions at the top of this bracket, which I think was very surprising, but I think it would have been different had had Clemson not won. And as Jim has to run in the other room real quick, I'll go through what I was talking about. So the top four seeds, Oregon at the one, of course, the only undefeated team left in the FBS this year. Georgia, after a thrilling overtime win in the SEC championship game in Atlanta last night, gets number two. Boise State, with the odds-on favorite for the Heisman Trophy, and Ashton Jeanty, who wins the Mountain West, is the 3 seed. And the surprise of the group is Big 12 champion Arizona State, who dominated the Big 12 championship game yesterday afternoon as they were the early game. So, Jim, out of those four teams, was there a surprise in the way any of them won? Or did you think this was pretty much chalk, with the exception of Georgia being the lower seed that beat Texas?
I think you hit it right on the head. I think they got this right. Boise State's resume was certainly a little bit better than Arizona's, even though Arizona State may have actually played a little bit better competition in a power conference, but you got to figure Boise State's strength of schedule was somewhere down around the 80s, but their only loss was to the number one and undefeated team in the country on a very late field goal. And let's also call it what it is, that this time next week, we're going to be talking Army Navy. We're also going to have the Heisman. And quite honestly, I have to feel that Ashton Jeanty is likely going to be the leader in the clubhouse with that type of performance that he put on against a very capable UNLV team. Arizona State played fantastically. I watched that game yesterday. Just all ends of the field. They basically could have done whatever they wanted to. And remember, 3-4 weeks ago, we were talking BYU being undefeated and in total control. And then we end up, things fall where they may. And we got a 14 tie. And then we get, 2 teams out of that conference. Only one of them get in as the conference champion, and they get a bye on top of it. This time last week, we were talking whoever's going to win that game may have actually ended up being the 12 seed.
Yeah, and I think the 12 seed ended up being the 12 seed because it was Clemson. Were they a 3-loss team?
Yes. So
speaking of 3, yeah, let's pull the ticker.
Throw it up there.
So the first round, which starts next Friday, or 2 Fridays, the 20th, the 5-12 is Texas, Clemson at College State in Austin. SMU has to come up to Happy Valley. Tough game. You got the battle for Indiana in the 7-10, and the marquee game of the weekend, the final game of the weekend, the 8 p.m. Eastern time start this 21st of December, Ohio State and Tennessee. Now, again, Tennessee is an SEC team, but it snows in Tennessee, so weather is not going to be that much of a factor. It will be, however, a factor at Happy Valley when SMU has to come in to Beaver Stadium to play against a very good Penn State team that came within an eyelash of upsetting the number 1 team in the country. I didn't watch any of the championship games, to be honest with you. I actually took a weekend off, Jim.
I caught the Boise game on Friday night. I caught the Big 12 title game yesterday. I watched the majority of the SEC title game, but I missed both of the games last night.
Yeah, so and when I say weekend off, no work, no DoorDash. I basically vegged out last night, kept an eye on things. I will say this: the 2 games that I'm intrigued about, obviously, for reasons, is Ohio State, Tennessee, the 8-9. But that 7-10 game is going to be real good. Indiana in its first ever playoff against Notre Dame, and it's going to be at Notre Dame, that game. So, Jim, your takeaways of the first seeding, and then I have a question for you after your takeaways. I want to see what you think about this.
I think the committee got the teams right. I think because you, me, and our friend John Rice, who was supposed to come on with us tonight, and we understand, there's some illnesses in the family. Everybody over there get well soon.
Absolutely.
We're sorry we couldn't bring you on tonight, John. You've got an open invite for next week. We'll talk about that, in the second half of the show. But I think once you get past Texas at 5, I've got a real problem with where these teams were slotted. I really do.
That's what we were talking about. Now, what John was saying is that he felt the top 5 seeds should have been the conference champions, which means the 12 seed Clemson would have been the 5. And I think if you would have put Clemson at the 5 and then slotted everybody 1 down, you would have gotten some interesting matchups there. But you're talking 5-12 would have been Clemson. Who's the 11? SMU?
Yes.
So Clemson, SMU would have been a rematch of the ACC championship game. The 6-11 then goes.
Texas would have gone to 6.
So it would have been
the 11 would have been Indiana.
No, the 11 would have been
Indiana. Was 10, so they would have slotted to 11.
So Indiana's the 11. They would have played Texas. Would have been Tennessee, Notre Dame at that point in time.
Correct. And Ohio State then at that point would have gotten
would have gone on the road to Penn State. Oh, we're missing Penn State. So it would have been Penn State, Tennessee, the 8-9, and the 7-10 would be Notre Dame.
Talk amongst yourselves. I will actually write this out.
So we have no idea what the hell we're talking about. But you would have gotten some decent games. I think they left it this way because you would have gotten a couple of rematches in there. Because if they were the 9, they would have played there. Yeah, that'd have been interesting. Oh. Sorry for the brief pause, ladies and gentlemen, but Jim's doing his smart guy thing, and, well, I'm just here to run my mouth.
Okay, so your first round matchups had, if you would have put Clemson as a top 5, as a major conference champion, which I think John can hopefully agree is my seasonal allergies are kicking in really bad tonight. That I think you're going to see this thing get restructured as early as next year for something like this, because let's be honest, this is their worst case scenario, that you had a group of 5 team with a strength of schedule in the 80s get the 3rd seed overall. You've got only one undefeated team. Nobody else in this field has just 1 loss, and Notre Dame, who's going to finish in the top 5, gets relegated down to the 7. So your first round matchups, had you put Clemson there, Clemson would have been the 5, would have hosted SMU.
Okay.
Texas would have slipped to the 6 and would have hosted Indiana. Penn State would have been your 7, and Tennessee would have had to go to Happy Valley. And then the Buckeyes, for the 2nd year in a row, would have had to go to South Bend.
Did we get better games this way, or do you think we would have better games that way?
I think we got better games this way because Penn State and Tennessee, you figure that's basically a Gator Bowl or a Holiday Bowl, New Year's Day. That's an SEC Big Ten that we see all too often. Notre Dame and Ohio State play each other a little bit more frequently anymore. Clemson and SMU would have been the 3rd time this year, and back-to-back, games. And then Texas and Indiana. Texas, arguably, that game could have gone either way. Texas, I still think, even though they are the 6th seed, I still think they are the 2nd best team in the country.
Yeah. Oh no, the argument can absolutely be made.
And there's part of me that actually thinks what Ohio State did to Indiana is going to look like Texas and Georgia compared to what Texas is going to do to Indiana.
I think Indiana will put up. Yeah, I think Indiana will put up a little bit better of a game than what people are thinking. But no, Texas is going to roll. So here's my second question to that: did you happen to see what Alabama's AD said?
That they actually need to look at their scheduling. Yes.
Yeah. Well, here's my problem with that. Number one, you lost all 3 of your games in conference. Oklahoma's not in the Big 12 anymore. They're in the SEC. You lost to Texas, and you lost to Vanderbilt. You lost to 2 teams that are
granted, all 3 of those are bowl eligible teams.
Yes, they're bowl eligible, but Oklahoma. It's like the argument of having a division winner in the NFL be 7-9. Oklahoma's 6-6. Vandy's what, 7-5, 6-6?
Correct. Now, I'm sorry to kind of jump on your point, and I'll let you get back to that here
in
just a second. But do you think that this actually could be an argument to where some of these major expanded conferences now look to maybe set up the division again? Or do they actually run it back like college basketball to where it's just you're slotted 1 through whatever?
I think the SEC will. I think the SEC is going to do 2 things. I think they're going to go to 9 conference games, because when people are hanging and I'm going back to Alabama with this, people were hanging the hat of Alabama on 2 wins against teams over 500. One of those was Mercer. I think the other one was College of Charleston.
Yes.
Who What? The other thing is this: the SEC and the ACC have got to play 9 conference games like the Big Ten does. Everybody's coast to coast now. It's not like, well, the SEC's not, but the ACC and the Big Ten both have teams on the West Coast. Why are you only playing 8 conference games?
As I
Play the 9 conference
there was one thing I forgot, and it'll run.
The first 2, and that was where I was going with it. The next 2. So the first 2 out, of course, are Miami and Alabama. Miami played themselves into being one of the first 2 out. Let's be very honest. But so did Alabama. And the fact that a week ago, Alabama at 3 losses, 2 of which to teams that, yes, they're bowl eligible, but they're 500 teams in Vanderbilt and Oklahoma. And by the way, not only did they lose those games, they got hood stomped in both those games. The scoreboard against Vandy was closer, but the scoreboard in Norman was just unreal. How do you only score 3 points against a team that can't play its way out of a paper fucking bag?
Let me pose the question to you, and I want you to be completely objective here with this.
Okay.
Bigger surprise now that we see the 12 are set and the first 2 out. Bigger shock. Indiana is in, only having played 1 game against the top 25 opponent and got boat raced, or Miami, as strong as they were, that had a bye up until about 2 weeks ago, is out completely.
Miami's out completely. Say what you will about what Indiana did, but there are 2 things that come with that. Number 1, schedules are made years in advance. You don't know when teams are going to be good. You don't know when teams are going to be bad. 2, they weren't just winning games until the Ohio State game. They were beating the piss out of everyone in front of them. And then they did. They went into Columbus. They played their first good game of the year, and they got hood stomped. But then they went out the next week and dropped a 60-something burger on frickin' Purdue. And, you're talking about a margin of victory if you take out Ohio State. We're bummed too, dude, but take care of the family. We've been there. And trust me when I tell you, little man, if you got him sick, no. Well, we think so.
And all these were from a few minutes ago. Sorry, John, I did not see your messages.
And that's exactly what we said too, John, is that they would go to 5 and everybody goes down a spot.
But he was expecting us to do math, all his brush kids.
What the fuck? Seriously, dude, you went to the same high school as us. What are you doing?
John, if you're still watching, you're one as well. What the hell were you thinking?
But not everybody had class with Storm and Norman. We don't need to worry about that stuff. But in all seriousness, Miami played their way into being dropped out. Should Miami have been the second team out? No, Miami should have been the first team out. If you're considering a 3-loss team in the playoff, you better have some big wins on your resume. And Alabama didn't. They just didn't.
I think Alabama's best win this year was when they actually went into Columbia and stomped the hell out of Mizzou. And Mizzou ended up in the back half of the top 25.
Did they beat Georgia? Yeah, because Georgia lost to them and to
Alabama's 3 losses were to Vanderbilt, Tennessee, and Oklahoma. You're right. And handily to Oklahoma. They beat Georgia when Georgia was number 2. They beat South Carolina, beat Wisconsin. That's not saying too much.
They were 5-7.
Beat LSU, shut out Mizzou, and that's when we thought Alabama was going to get very good. And then they dropped the 50 burger on Mercer, and then go out and lay the egg in Norman before coming back and winning the Iron Bowl. Yes, they finished 9-3 overall.
If they would have won in Norman, or then they're in. Excuse me, but you lose that game like that, you don't deserve a spot. I'm sorry.
You're right, because it actually would have put them at 6-2, and they would have had the tiebreaker with the win over Georgia. So it would have been Alabama and Texas in the SEC championship game, and guaranteed both of those would have gotten in.
And Georgia would be the one sitting out.
kudos while we're thinking about it to both Indiana and SMU. Look at the job that both of those programs did. Indiana was picked to finish second to last in the Big Ten, finished third outright, and gets themselves in. SMU was picked in the preseason to finish in the bottom of the ACC and basically lost on a walk-off yesterday to Clemson after running roughshod through the conference the entire season.
Yeah, no, big SMU is back after the death penalty in the 80s that they had, what was it, 40 years ago or so?
Something like that.
Yeah, and you got to give credit where credit is due. SMU was winning that game, took their foot off the gas, and put up a late touchdown to tie it. They were headed for overtime, and then they gave up a good kick return, and then Klubnik threw one good pass that got them into field goal range. So, yeah, they did lose on a walk-off. So you got to take what it is with that. As far as the rest of the conference championship games, Big Ten game was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be. I thought Penn State was going to get their asses beat, and they came very close to winning that game. I think the only dominant one was Arizona State.
Yes.
They beat the piss out of Iowa State.
Nobody was expecting that.
No, I was expecting a close game. And I think because they smoked them, they ended up at the 4 seed.
I think so as well. It's because it basically puts their let's also be honest, because Clemson dominated the first half of that game. I want to say it was 24-7 at the half, 21-7 at the half or something. And then it was a tale of two halves. SMU comes out and handles business. SMU's the 4. SMU at the very worst is the 4. They'd be the 3, and Boise would be the 4.
Yeah, either way, Boise was getting I think the committee was so in love with Genty and the way they played. Boise was getting a bye either way. I think the only way Boise wouldn't have gotten a bye is if we would have had an upset in the Big Ten and SMU winning in the ACC. Because at that point in time, John and I were talking about this too. I had thought if Penn State beat Oregon and Georgia beat Texas, Penn State would have been the number 1 overall seed in this tournament.
I don't know if I wholeheartedly agree with that. I would have to I would have to say, even with a close loss, I still think that Oregon would have possibly gotten
but they wouldn't have won the conference, Jim.
They would not have won the conference, yes, but
so they couldn't have gotten a bye. That's what we're talking about. If whoever won the conference championship games was 4 of those teams were getting buys. And if Penn State would have beaten Oregon and Georgia beat Texas, Penn State's your number 1. Georgia's a 2-loss team.
For maybe a 2-loss Georgia over a 2-loss Penn State.
Look who Georgia lost to. Georgia lost to Alabama, who was a 3-loss team, and 2 of those losses were by teams that are under 500. And who was the other team that beat Georgia? Because Georgia beat Texas twice.
Alabama beat them, and then Ole Miss got them.
And Ole Miss was a 3 or 4-loss team too.
Correct. Ole Miss was Ole Miss is at 16 right now.
And that would have been Penn State's only loss was to Ohio State. Penn State would have been the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. And you would have been talking about the 5 being Oregon. And if everything stays the way it is here, you would have had Oregon Clemson in the 5-12.
So when you look at everything and break it all down, you've got hang on 1 second here. So you've got Oregon out of the Big Ten, Georgia out of the SEC, Boise out of the Mountain West. There's your group of 5. Arizona out of the Big 12. Texas out of the SEC, that's 2. Your 6 Penn State out of the Big Ten is 2. Notre Dame, your independent, arguably group of 5, there's 2, if you actually want to lump them in like that. Ohio State out of the Big Ten, that's 3. Tennessee out of the SEC, that's 3. The 10 seed, Indiana out of the Big Ten, that's 4. SMU out of the ACC, that's 1, and Clemson out of the ACC, that's 2. So you've got a really good mix there. You've got the Big Ten, arguably, really only they get 4 in, but only 2 of them a lot of people took seriously this year. Penn State, very good, but certainly didn't measure up to Ohio State because James Franklin still tries to be the biggest brain in the room, no matter where he is. Arguably, that could have happened. That could have been the case yesterday if we would have watched it. Kurt Cignetti has to actually get my vote for National Coach of the Year with what he did with that program, coming over from James Madison. You get 3 out of the SEC, which we all thought were they going to get 3? Were they going to get 4? They get the 3. The Big Ten gets the 4 because of how competitive the SEC was this year. I mean, think about this. Ole Miss finishes at 16 in the final poll. It actually puts them 7th in the SEC.
Yeah, the SEC is always a tough conference, but they beat the piss out of each other this year. You don't really see that in a lot of the other conferences. The ACC kind of does it, but they've been doing that for years. The Big Ten really is, you don't see a whole lot of upsets.
How competitive was the SEC? When the dust settled, only 3 out of 18 schools did not get bowl eligible. Auburn, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Everybody else had at least 6 wins.
That's shocking, especially Auburn getting a big win against Texas A&M late in the year.
I mean, Auburn was 5-7, Kentucky was 4-8, Mississippi State was 2-10 and 0-8 in the conference.
Jesus, did they fire their coach like Purdue did?
Yeah, it's you kind of had to figure the Purdue thing was coming.
Oh yeah. So let's get into the games a little bit. So the 5-12 game, the Clemson-Texas game, that's in Texas. Do we know when that one's going to be broadcast?
I actually am pulling up the schedule right now. I just had it. That game, as a matter of fact, let's run through them. The first game is going to be the Indiana-Notre Dame game, but if we're going right down the pipe, that will be Saturday the 21st at 4 p.m. on TNT. Texas opens as an 11-point favorite in Austin.
Do they cover?
I think I don't think it's a matter of if they cover, is how many times will they cover.
But here's my question. Now let's get into this. Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning?
Does it matter?
I'm talking about who Sark's going to start.
Again, does it matter?
For score-wise, no. But I think for play-wise, it does. I think he's going to start Arch.
The over-under on that game is 51.5.
Take the over.
I think Texas got the capability to hit that on their own in this one.
They do. Klubnik, every time he faces a good defense with a decent pass rush, he folds like a tent.
The 6-11 game will be in Happy Valley. It'll be the noon game on the 21st. Penn State and SMU at Beaver Stadium. Penn State opens as an 8.5-point favorite. The over-under 53.5.
Let's see what the weather is.
I think this could be, I don't want to say a team is ripe here. Penn State, very, very good, wants to grind it out. But let's actually see what SMU likes to do, especially with the fact that they like to run track meets against a team that really, Penn State doesn't score a ton. They don't score less, but they don't score a ton.
But that's just it. This will be the best defense SMU faces all year. And give James Franklin a few weeks to prepare, especially a defensive scheme. I think they can slow SMU down. I think Penn State gets this win. I really do.
I think so as well. But I would say of probably all the games in the first round, this one might have a little bit more upset written on it than the others.
Yeah, probably the most ripe for an upset one is that one.
The 7-10 game will actually happen the day before on Friday the 20th, and that will be at Notre Dame Stadium where the 7th-seeded Irish will host the number 10 Indiana Hoosiers. Notre Dame opens as an 8.5-point favorite, and the over-under 50.5. and that game will be on ABC, ESPN. Tickets for that game are starting as low as $900.
Oh, that's it?
That's it. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Steal it out of the collection plate up there in South Bend.
Oh, he went there. Catholic jokes will be tolerated. Well done, sir. Yeah, Marcus Freeman is starting to build a Notre Dame for the previous century with what he's doing there. Where I like Indiana to keep it close and find a way to pull this out is the fact that you're giving Cignetti 3 weeks to prepare. He is a damn good coach. And yes, he wins everywhere he goes. And I think he'll keep Indiana in this thing for the next few years. I don't think they have enough. I don't like their quarterback. He felt pressure for the first time all season against Ohio State, and he did not respond well. He's going to feel it again. Notre Dame's defense has played well. Yeah, I like Notre Dame. I don't think they cover, though, Jim. I think this is close.
And then the final game, regretfully, Saturday the 21st in prime time at Ohio Stadium. The number 8 Buckeyes will host the number 9 Tennessee Volunteers. This will actually be my prison inmate game of the first round. It's like cheering for gonorrhea versus syphilis, because if there's one fan base I cannot stomach more than Buckeye fans, it is Volunteer fans. The Buckeyes open as a 7.5-point favorite, over under a very low 47.5.
It's going to snow like a motherfucker. That's why. I was going to call this the Jim Cornetti can't fucking stomach it bowl. I like your version better.
This will be the Jim Cornetti will be watching the Hallmark Channel instead religiously that night.
Yeah, I've already told Steph and Bobby that the TV is mine that night. So, although I watched only one game this year, that was Michigan. So I think I'm going to listen to Paul Keels the 21st. Look, it's put up or shut up time for Ryan Day and his entire staff in Columbus. You get a home playoff game, even though you're not getting a bye. I think Ohio State would have one of the easier routes to the final, because you're going to play Oregon at a neutral site if you win. You only lost by a point in their house. They have to win this game. There's only one team in this tournament that has to win their game, and it's Ohio State, and they're the 8. You see what Herb Street said today? Herb Street thinks they'd have been better off being the 9 and having to go to Rocky Top because they need to get away from the fan base. How bad is that?
I completely agree, because, I'm going to sound angry Buckeye fan here, and I'm going to go there. They basically bent over backwards to help out Ohio State in this, because they give them probably the weakest of any of the lower seeds in the first round. And then the one team that beat them, that's in this tournament it's not going to be an away game. It's going to be on a neutral field. So they basically line things up that if they can get their revenge against Oregon, they've got a clean shot into the semifinal at that particular point. I still don't think that they've actually got enough talent to win this thing. But I would say they've got easily, they set this up with the easiest path for them to get there, for Ryan Day to be able to, try to save his job, because if he doesn't get to New Year's Eve, if he doesn't get to New Year's weekend, he's gone.
Oh, no, I agree. We will talk about that another time, about feelings about that, because that's something John and I, when we talked on the phone Friday night, he understood where I was coming from with my question that I've asked you before, especially with some of the names that they floated out there, like Eddie George. You're going to hire a guy who never beat him as a player. That's not knowing the culture. Anyways, yeah, they would have an easy path into the semifinal at that point in time. But an easier path is whoever wins Texas Clemson. I don't think Arizona State beats either one of them. Because the Texas Clemson winner gets Arizona State. The Tennessee Ohio State winner gets Oregon. SMU Penn State winner. Never mind that. If Penn State beats SMU, they get Boise on a neutral field.
Yeah, let's go over that. How that lined up is that the Ohio State Tennessee winner goes to Oregon on New Year's Day at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the Rose Bowl this year.
The Penn State Tennessee winner goes to the Superdome in New Orleans to play Georgia on New Year's night.
In the Sugar Bowl.
Texas and Indiana, the winner there goes to Boise on New Year's Eve in Glendale.
Fiesta.
And then the Clemson SMU winner gets Arizona State in your neck of the woods on New Year's Day.
The Peach Bowl. So let's run this thing through. Let's pick these games. Let's start at the top. Clemson, Texas. Texas is going to walk through that game. Texas is going to win that game pretty handily. So we have Texas going to Arizona State in Glendale on December 31st.
That actually would be New Year's Day.
Oh, New Year's Day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Boise is the New Year's Eve game, whereas everything else is going to be the New Year's Day.
Okay. So I think the Buckeyes win on the 21st. I think they beat Tennessee, and they will play in what was used to be a traditional Rose Bowl against Oregon out in Pasadena. Jim, I like chalk in this one. I like Penn State to beat SMU and to go to Boise, and that's the one in Glendale. Is that the one in Glendale, or is that the one in?
That would actually be in Glendale.
Okay, and the Peach Bowl is Arizona State.
Correct.
Okay, so you'd see Penn State, Boise, in Glendale, and then why do I think Indiana's going to win this game?
Notre Dame's ripe, but I still think that they've got a little bit too much talent.
Let me say this. If they can make it a shootout, I like Indiana's chances.
I do too, but the thing is, I think the key is going to be how much did they learn from getting that ass whooped, 3 weeks ago in Columbus.
Very true. And
especially
can they stop
against a big boy like Notre Dame? Because let's also be honest, as much as we shit on them, college football is better when Notre Dame is this good.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. Can't stand them. I think if you want to talk about an entitled fan base, go from Columbus to fucking South Bend.
Because let's think about that for a minute. All due respect for John, to John, college football can survive Notre Dame being down. Can survive Michigan being down because of the conference that they play in with some of the other powerhouses. So if they actually fall back, Wisconsin can jump in there. Nebraska used to be great. Now Indiana apparently is stepping up here. So you've got that rotation. Now you introduce USC and UCLA that hopefully will jump into that 4A. Notre Dame spreads across all conferences. You get the Michigan State game. You get the Michigan game. You get UCLA. You get the USC game. You get Boston College. You get the service academies. They spread out across everything. So it basically it's behoove of them to be better for how many different regions that they can touch.
Agreed. As far as what is good for college football, but I have to obligatorily say screw Notre Dame because it's Notre Dame. So yeah, let's go chalk in that one too.
How funny would it have been if Miami would have gotten in and we could have possibly gotten the Catholics versus convicts first round?
That would have been freaking great. Remember, that's only Catholics, convicts, only one of those two games, remember. There's two of those games. Do you know what the other one is? And no, it's not Ignatius in like Cleveland Heights. It's You know,
You get champions pose, you get champions music.
I appreciate that, sir. Oh, it's John Carroll, Mount Union. I remember, I want to say it was my first year of college. And some people I knew went to John Carroll and they were like, oh, that you should see this shirt. I'm like, dude, you need to get me one of those. So that means in the quarterfinals, we would have Texas, Arizona State. Texas will whoop that ass.
I think there's one team in this tournament that can legitimately take down Oregon, and I think it's Texas.
The homer part of me thinks the Buckeyes can beat Oregon, which I think they can. Will they? That's the question of the day. So I'm going to do something I haven't done ever with you, dude. Oregon wins Rose Bowl. And the Ryan Day era is over. Penn State beats Boise, and Georgia rolls either team that they play in the Sugar Bowl. So that sets up Texas, Oregon in the semis, Penn State, Georgia.
Could we reseed this?
That's what they need to do. Because if it goes chalk, it's actually right, because that means the lowest seeded team that's left in the tournament is Ohio State after the first round, and they get Oregon as the 1. Arizona State's the 4. They would get the highest remaining seed, which is the 5 of Texas. Boise's the 3. They'd get the 6 of Penn State. Georgia's the 2. They get the 7 of Notre Dame. It's set up so that the lowest seed plays the highest seed. The problem here is this. You have teams that are lower seeded, i.e. Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, even SMU and Tennessee, that have beaten good competition this year and have earned their way into the playoff. However, they're a matchup nightmare because I'm pretty sure the injuries that Oregon is dealing with in their secondary would help Ohio State play better against them and match up better. Arizona State against Texas. Arizona State wouldn't know what to do if Texas got running the football because they're not that big up front. Texas is a bunch of Hoss Farm boys that wrestle cattle for fun.
I mean, you have to figure that the networks are salivating over this right now because they actually get, you get Ohio State, you get Texas, you get Penn State, and you get Notre Dame on that opening weekend. And you got to figure there's no way that all 4 of those marquee programs roll out in the first round.
No, I think they all win in the first round. And then, like I said, it sets up Texas, Arizona State, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Boise, and Georgia against Notre Dame. So that means your semifinals, Texas, Oregon in the first semifinal, Georgia, Penn State in the second. Right? What do you think?
That's tasty.
It is tasty. I think any of the semifinals would be tasty. Even Texas and the Buckeyes would be tasty.
Texas and the Buckeyes?
If Ohio State won that game.
Cunt bucket.
I'm just saying. I picked Oregon. Well, if my boys get there and play Oregon, am I going to root the shit out of it? Yes, I am. But I picked Oregon live on the air.
We've done 45 minutes of this. Let's kind of peel back, the layers here, and let's actually talk about some of the other games that a lot of the times are even more entertaining.
Oh, agreed. Cricket Wireless is sponsoring a bowl game.
These
the
games
Bahamas
will start this Saturday.
Which I disagree with, by the way. They should start Sunday. because Saturday's Army Navy. And by the way, I know I took it off already, but hats off to the 13th ranked American Athletic Conference champion Black Knights of Army. And that championship game was at Mikey Stadium. Dude, that place was rocking. I've been there before. That is one of the coolest things ever when you see the Corps cadets hop the wall and start doing push-ups when they score a touchdown. So the Cricket Celebration Bowl, who's in that one, James?
So let's I'll go right down the pipe here. As a matter of fact, it actually, I think I got that wrong. It's the first bowl game that we'll see this coming Saturday will be the IS4S Salute to Veterans Bowl. We'll have South Alabama against Western Michigan out of the MAC.
MAC team.
Tuesday, December 17th, your boys, the Memphis Tigers, will actually be playing the West Virginia Mountaineers in the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl.
Anything with caffeine is a good thing. Scooters Coffee is one I might like to try. And out of sheer loyalty for an old friend, I got Memphis.
I mean, let's be honest. It's a little overplayed, but kudos to Andy Williams for the most wonderful time of the year. For a college football fan, it is your favorite song because it means it's Capital One Bowl Week. There is nothing better than coming home and throwing on a college football game, even if you've got no rooting interest. And then some days you got a game on at the office, and then you come home and you got two more on at night.
Hell yeah.
For an entire week.
It's beautiful.
Wednesday, the 18th, Western Kentucky will face James Madison at the Boca Raton Bowl.
Both teams are going to Florida, so I actually got Western Kentucky in that one.
Cal, as a matter of fact, that same night at 9 p.m., Cal will face number 24 UNLV at the Art of Sport LA Bowl at SoFi Stadium. And Cal is actually favored in that game. By
UNLV.
Still.
UNLV.
Thursday the 19th, Georgia Southern will face Sam Houston, and Georgia Southern favored by 5.5 in the R+L Carriers New Orleans Bowl.
Got to go Georgia Southern. I've actually been to their campus, so Georgia Southern.
On Friday the 20th, this one is going to be probably the most interesting one. Now, we know that Indiana and Notre Dame are going to play that night. But the one that I'm going to be paying attention to, the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. Tulane will play Florida. The Gators are an 11.5-point favorite, and that one will take place at Raymond James Stadium.
You gonna be mad if I pick Tulane in that game?
No, because I want Billy Napier gone, although I'd love to see them get a bowl win.
Yeah.
And Tulane was a team that could have made an argument had they actually not fallen off at the end of the year to get that group of 5 bid.
Well, they're the ones that played against Army the other night, and Army just dominated that game.
Right. The other game taking place that night, I get to throw a little bit of shade because the Ohio team that won their conference, Ohio Bobcats, will play Jacksonville State in the Staff DNA Cure Bowl in Camping World Stadium in Orlando. And the Bobcats are favored by 2 as Justin Herbert went down and is hurt.
No shit.
Yeah.
I turned it off.
And to make matters worse, Joe Alt got called for a holding on the same play. What happened? Oh, he got crushed, and then when he landed, I think he came down weird. He got
turning it back on.
Up.
Yeah, I'm turning it back on. I like OU in that game, and congratulations. First time was in 1968 since they won the MAC.
Yep. Saturday the 21st are the only games on the schedule. The entire bowl schedule are the playoff games. We've already covered those. They will take the 22nd off for the NFL, and then we're right back at it. Monday the 23rd, Coastal Carolina will play UTSA at Brooks Stadium in Conway, South Carolina in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. UTSA favored by 6.
Yeah, Texas San Antonio, who had a great year, coming very close to winning that American Athletic Conference championship themselves. As Herbert is still down 6-0 Kansas City, 4:28 left in the first half.
Another MAC team later on, and as a matter of fact, that's what's going to be so great about that. That game in South Carolina, that game takes place at 11 a.m. on a Monday. 2:30 in the afternoon, Northern Illinois out of the MAC will face Fresno State out of the Mountain West in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl in Albertson Stadium on the blue turf in Boise. NIU favored by 1.
NIU, big win over Notre Dame this year. I think they take that. Plus, the blue turf's always nice to look at. You should see the blue turf in the game, dude.
Yep. Tuesday, Christmas Eve, actually, the only game on the schedule in prime time, the Hawaii Bowl, which basically means, it'll be 8 o'clock our time. It'll be like friggin' noon theirs, it seems. South Florida, San Jose State, Spartans favored by 2.5.
South Florida wins that game. Oh, did you see UCF rehired Scott Frost?
Yes. You had to figure something like that was going to be coming.
Yeah, who does he think he is? Greg Schiano?
Speaking of, Thursday, the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, we've got 3 on the slate. One of the more interesting ones, Pittsburgh will face Toledo at Ford Field, the Game Above Sports Bowl. Panthers favored by 9.
Yeah, I think Pitt wins that game, but good for Toledo.
That's also a third team, a third MAC team getting a bowl bid.
Absolutely.
One of the more, certainly, I would say, arguably the most intriguing game of the day in the Rate Bowl. Rutgers. Now I said rate with a T.
I was like, Jim, Deshaun's playing.
Rutgers will be playing Kansas State at 5:30 at Chase Field, and K-State favored by 7.5.
In Arizona? Wow. You know what? I like Rutgers. Schiano has done a phenomenal job, and they'd have a better ball than that if they didn't blow it against Illinois.
The primetime game, Arkansas State will be playing a 4th MAC team in the Falcons of Bowling Green State. BGSU favored by 6 in the 68 Ventures Bowl.
Bowling Green.
And that one will take place in Mobile.
Yep.
We move on to Friday, December 27th. These are where now some of the heavy hitters are starting to come into play here. First game up on the docket at noon, Oklahoma and Navy. So Navy actually gets Army-Navy and then literally has to flip around a week later with no rest in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl. OU favored by 7.5 at Ammon G. Carter Stadium in Fort Worth.
Well, they get 2 weeks because Army-Navy's this coming weekend. So that's 20. So they get about 2 weeks. Listen, man, playing against the service academies in bowl games is tough because you never know what you're going to get. Having said that, I think OU takes the momentum from beating Alabama and wins that game.
This one has got probably one of the best storylines, let's be honest, you can kind of call this the Giant Killer Bowl. 3:30 p.m. at Protective Stadium in Birmingham, Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt.
I like that.
That one could be a lot of fun.
Give me Georgia Tech.
And Hallmark star McCall Hardman with a reception there. They had about the one that they did, that you probably saw the commercials for and everything. they had probably 6 different players, including a cameo by Christian Okoye in that movie.
Shut the fuck up. He was my favorite running back for years.
They did
'Cause he
not
was-
go back on the cameos. George Karlaftis actually had like a 2-second, cameo in it.
Did he really?
Yep. McCole Hardman was in there a couple of times. Edwards-Helaire was in that for a minute. Donna Kelsey was in there several times.
I knew Donna Kelsey was in it.
Hold
on, off topic. Did you see Jason was driving in the Mummers outfit, the Eagles golf cart all over Philly, and he fucking dumped it?
The only people that should duff a golf cart would be Bam Margera and Johnny Knoxville. And
Hi, I'm Jason Kelsey, and welcome to Jackass.
Back to it at 7 p.m. Oh, wow, they got a lot of good games in prime time here. 7 p.m., Texas Tech and Arkansas at the AutoZone Liberty Bowl in Memphis. Arkansas favored by 2.5.
Arkansas had a quietly good year.
So did Texas Tech.
They really did. That's going to be a shootout. I like Tech, but Arkansas can win that game.
You want to talk shootout? Let's talk about the next one. 8 p.m. on Fox, the DirecTV Holiday Bowl. Now we're starting to get into some of the big name bowls in San Diego. Number 21, Syracuse and Washington State. Cuse favored by 6. It pains you to say it, but you're going to say it.
I hope Wazoo beats the piss out of him.
You hope, but yeah.
I think Syracuse.
Heart says A&M, head says Cuse.
Yeah, head says Cuse.
And in prime time, and I mean really prime time, 10:30 p.m. Texas A&M and USC kicking off your weekend in the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. A&M favored by 3. And that one's going to win by 2. That one's going to be at Allegiant.
A&M's going to win by 2 touchdowns.
Then we go to Saturday the 28th. We've got some more heavy hitters here. Now this is where some of your ranked teams are going to start showing up a little bit more. UConn and North Carolina at 11 a.m. at the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. North Carolina favored by 6.
I'd pay more attention if this was basketball.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the next segment here.
Yep.
Speaking of Boston, Boston College and Nebraska at Yankee Stadium at noon in the Pet Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. Nebraska favored by 4.5.
I like Nebraska. I think, and just if I can do this real quick, Dylan Raiola had a decent year. Remember, he's a true freshman, and Matt Rule has done a great job there in the short time he's been in Lincoln. So I like Nebraska in that game.
I could see Nebraska maybe kind of taking that Indiana's type, step next year. I don't want to say that they're going to be near the bottom, but I think they're going to be that team that kind of elevates as maybe Penn State comes back a little bit. Maybe Ohio State with their payroll, they're still going to be near the top. Michigan's on the come up, especially with their recruiting class. But I can maybe see a Wisconsin with Nebraska with a Dylan Raiola maybe starting to challenge some teams next year.
I think the team's going to take a step back as Oregon because Gabriel's going to be gone. But yeah, no, I agree with you. That's Nebraska's the one that's the next to do the come up.
I think this could be one of the more mismatched games of the day in the Isleta, New Mexico Bowl. Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns against TCU. Horned Frogs favored by 9.5, and that'll be in Albuquerque.
Yeah. Horned Frogs.
The Consolation Prize Bowl, I think. Oh, God, I just saw the name of it. Number 18, Iowa State will face the number 13 Miami Hurricanes at the Camping World Stadium for the second time that stadium's hosting a bowl in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Iowa State favored by 1.5.
If Cam Ward plays,
Thank
Miami
you.
wins.
That's the first thing I thought of is Cam Ward even going to play in this game?
Well, I think he will. I think he'd rather get hurt playing for Miami than he would increasing his draft stock and being drafted by the Browns.
A fifth MAC team. So I don't have the ding on here anymore. Never mind. Miami of Ohio will face Colorado State at Arizona Stadium in Tucson in the Snoop Dogg Arizona Bowl.
Get the fuck out of here.
The Red Hawks favored by 1.5.
Miami's got to win that game. Miami's got to win that game.
I think we're all going to be winners with that game.
Seriously, could a bigger bunch of nerds win a game that Snoop Dogg is involved in?
Against a team from Colorado?
They're going to have a team from Colorado in that game every year.
5:45 p.m. at the Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium in Annapolis, the Go Bowling Military Bowl, East Carolina, North Carolina State.
East Carolina.
At the Alamo Dome, the one that probably Mike's going to be certainly paying attention to that night, 7:30 p.m. on ABC, number 17 BYU in the Valero Alamo Bowl against number 23 Colorado.
I like Colorado in this game because I think the stars are going to play for Colorado. Did you see the picture I sent you, speaking of BYU?
Yes.
Come on, that's awesome. Dude, the
only thing worse than that's going to get us thrown off the air is the other thing you sent me yesterday. We can't say it. We won't.
We can say
No, Mike, shut up. Mike, shut up.
Can I say the one about BYU though?
No.
Come on. It's legit though.
It is legit. I just don't trust you.
That's hurtful.
Would you rather you say it or me?
But what he signed, what the NIL thing is?
But.
It's probably a better idea if I don't say it, but
I can see it now. Wise Guys OTR. Mike tries to get us thrown off the air on purpose.
thoughts crossed my mind.
You're a dick. And to close out the night at 9:15 at Independence Stadium in Shreveport, Marshall will face Army in the Radiant Technologies Independence Bowl.
Army is going to grind that game fully out. And Army, listen, if they win next week and they win their bowl game, it's 13 wins for Army.
How awesome is it that we've got Army Navy with two really good teams the last time that they were both this good, and they're both headed to bowls?
That's awesome.
The only thing that would have been better if Air Force would have been there. Monday the 30th, we've actually, this is the one that I actually am paying very, very, very close attention to. The TransPerfect Music City Bowl. Shit, I will be at work. I'm going to have to find a way to get away to watch this. Iowa and number 19 Mizzou at Nissan Stadium in Nashville.
You can probably sign into your cable account on your phone.
I will, or certainly I'll have ESPN up at the office because I'm not going to miss this. Mizzou favored by 1.5. But I'll tell you what, Kirk Ferentz and Coach Drink, that's an entertaining as hell coaching matchup alone.
Yes, it is. I agree with you.
Two guys that are always good for sound bites. Ferentz for, how serious he is, and Coach Drink doesn't take anything seriously.
No, Coach Drink still has my favorite line of the
Connor
year.
Stalions line, yeah.
Yes.
New Year's Eve. This is the old time, that we used to get on, you would get to the families on New Year's Day and you'd have all those games lined up. Now it's going to fall on New Year's Eve because of the playoffs on New Year's Day. We start things off. Certainly intriguing right now. Alabama gets left out of the field. Their consolation prize, Michigan, at 12 noon and in the ReliaQuest Bowl in Raymond James Stadium, I believe hosting their third bowl game of this postseason. Bama favored by 11.5.
You know how that 8-9 matchup in the tournament is the thing you're not wanting to look at? That's this game for me.
I think it's all a matter of Michigan's going to want to cap off their season and how many Alabama players. Is Alabama going to do what, who was it? Florida State did last year. They get left out and half the team basically just decides, I'm done.
Well, there's talk already that their number 2 wide receiver, and for that matter, their number 1 wide receiver might both be in the portal this year. Kalen DeBoer's got a tough job going in after Nick Saban. I don't envy him that at all, but at the same time, you're still a head coach at Alabama, dude.
Talk about two teams that that had a lot higher expectations, but still had themselves pretty good years. The Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, 2 p.m. on New Year's Eve at the Sun Bowl in El Paso, Texas. Louisville and Washington. Louisville favored by 3.5.
I think Louisville wins that game too.
Good on Washington for getting themselves back to a bowl after realistically being left for dead after getting to the national championship game last year.
Yeah, no, they that's a great season for them. When you get to the national title game and you lose your quarterback, your number 1 wide receiver, part of your defense and your head coach, and you still get bowl eligible, take it.
The Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, always an entertaining one at Camping World Stadium in Orlando. South Carolina ranked 15th against number 20 Illinois. Carolina favored by 10.
They're going to smoke Illinois.
I think so as well. I would like to see Illinois kind of keep that close, but I think South Carolina also peaked late.
Yes.
And the last game of New Year's Day, outside of the playoff, of course, because the Boise State matchup will be that night, Baylor and LSU in the Kinder's Texas Bowl. LSU only favored by 3 in this one.
It's because Brian Kelly's their head coach.
And that one's going to be at Energy Stadium in Texas, in Houston.
Yeah. LSU is going to win that game. As good as Baylor played down the stretch, I think LSU is going to win that game.
And then we move into our last few. Basically the first round is done. And we move on to Thursday, January 2nd. So now we're into 2025. We've actually still got 3 full days worth of bowls outside of the playoff. So on Thursday, January 2nd, the Tax Slayer Gator Bowl in Jacksonville, Duke and number 14 Ole Miss, who Ole Miss gets one more game to go their way. They could have actually gotten themselves backed into the playoff. There's no line on that game right now.
Ole Miss wins that game.
At Gerald Ford, then we move to Friday, January 3rd at 4 p.m. on ESPN. The Gerald Ford Stadium in Dallas, North Texas and Texas State in the ServPro First Responders Bowl. No line.
Okay.
Sometimes it's always good to get some of these these mid-majors from the same state that aren't in the same conference. This one could be a little bit of fun.
Isn't Texas State the one Scott Bakula quarterback to one win a season after winning a national championship?
You're an asshole. I knew you were. I knew you were going to go there.
Is Kathy Ireland still kicking field goals?
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Is Sinbad still playing D line?
You had to mention Kathy Ireland when we're that close to halftime. I'm going to need a cold shower in a minute. So,
My bad.
seven. God damn it! Get off my screen. My favorite bowl name every year. 7:30 p.m. at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, Minnesota and Virginia Tech in the Duke's Mayo Bowl.
Duke's Mayo.
I'm a Hellman's guy.
Yeah. Minnesota rose the boat.
And the last bowl game outside of the playoff on Saturday, January 4th at 11 a.m. from, I forgot about this because it's going to be 11 a.m. for us, but it's actually going to be a little bit further ahead. Talk about two teams vacationing, Buffalo and Liberty in the Bahamas Bowl. Liberty
Who
favorite.
cares?
So you get to play in a game that you need your passport to get to.
Yeah. Buffalo, I think, wins this game. Liberty's a good team. I got to go with the school from New York. But does anybody really care if you're going and playing in the Bahamas? Who wins?
Exactly. Everybody's a winner.
Exactly. So that's all the bowls, top to bottom. We've given you guys picks for most of the college football playoff. Jim, what's number 3 on that list this week? College basketball is in full swing, and of course, we are having the same problem we had, it seemed like, in college football until Oregon took a stranglehold. And who wants to be the top team in the country? Of course, UConn goes to Maui and loses all 3 games.
And they were the second-ranked team in the country, although they were getting quite a few first-place votes and was right on Kansas's ass. Loses
and
3 in a
Kansas
row and almost falls completely out of the top 25.
And Kansas lost back-to-back games.
Was
it Mizzou today? Who was it the game before?
Because the polls don't come out until later tonight. Kansas actually fell to Creighton, crushed them by 13 the other night, and then they actually go into Columbia and lose by 9. And it doesn't get any easier because now they get to play North Carolina State, who was in the Final Four last year.
Yeah, Kansas might lose 3 in a row to go with that. But, Jim, I'll say this. As long as you get to the tournament, anything can happen. And I think they'll all get to the tournament. But, I mean, that's got to be a little nerve-wracking for both UConn and Kansas to lose like this. And especially UConn against teams they should be beating. Because they didn't lose a ton from that team last year. They won 2 in a row, right?
Yes.
They didn't lose a ton.
But
so
2 to falling completely out in the coaches poll and dropping 23 spots in the AP to 25. I mean,
that's huge.
They'll come up a little bit this week. They'll be back in the coaches poll. But you're number 1 when the polls come out later tonight or sometime tomorrow. Charles Barkley is going to be happy. It's going to be the Auburn Tigers.
Unreal.
They are 7-0, and they actually, from last week's poll, Kansas got 35 first-place votes, 1499 total. Auburn was only 9 votes behind and got 26 first-place votes. Number 2 is going to be Tennessee. Number 3 is going to be Kentucky. And one of my personal favorites, Marquette, is going to slide up to 4.
That's a big move. That's a big move. Hey, speaking of college basketball, did you see the other thing I sent you today?
You sent me multiple things.
The St. John's thing?
Yes. Go ahead with that.
Of course, we touched on it last week. St. John's losing its iconic head coach, Lou Carnesecca, at the age of 99, just a few weeks before his 100th birthday. And today, or yesterday, excuse me, in St. John's first game since Lou passed at home. Rick Pitino came out in a Lou Carnesecca special, the custom-made sweater. And say what you want about Rick Pitino. He's a lot of things. Scandal-ridden, wannabe soundbite guy with that's not Larry Bird walking out the tunnel. He was visibly moved to tears wearing that sweater during that game in Lou Carnesecca Arena at St. John's. I think that was one of the more fitting tributes I've ever seen for a former coach at a school. I think it was when John Thompson died. It was his kid, the head coach at Georgetown, when that happened. And he walked around with the towel like his dad did for a game or two. But this one hit me. And that's why I sent it to you. I know neither one of us are big Pitino fans. Although the "Who's your daddy" thing when he coached against his kid was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But I honestly was moved. Because Louis Carnesecca, that's a name I remember from New York basketball when I was a kid. So that was pretty cool. But as far as college basketball, you've had a couple of big wins by fringe teams as well. It's going to be an interesting year.
I mean, looking at things right now, Kansas with the back-to-back losses, it's going to tumble out of the top 5 completely. But this is where things have gone anymore, that outside of Kentucky, you don't have blue bloods there. Duke's going to be in the top. They're right now sitting at 9th. They're up 2 spots. They're going to they'll probably move up somewhere around 7 or 6. Wisconsin, not necessarily a blue blood, but they're they're 8-0. They're on the come up. Florida had a big win the other day. They've moved to 9-0. They're at 13. They're gonna come up. The biggest riser last week, and is probably gonna move up a little bit more. Michael, again, your childhood friend, the Memphis Tigers, are sitting at 6-1. They got 500 votes. They jumped 10 spots from 26 to 16, and they're gonna move up a little bit more again this week.
I tell you what, and Penny Hardaway's a good coach. He's a very good coach. You don't see many players transitioning to college coaching as well as some. I think Patrick Ewing's a very good coach at Georgetown. They weren't going to get to where they were when he was a player.
Juwan Howard started that way, and then things fell apart.
And that was more his actions as opposed to his coaching.
Right.
But Patrick Ewing started out well and then tapered off. But Penny Hardaway's done really well at Memphis. So yeah, I sent Ed a note after they won against after they not only won the one big game in football, but also won a couple games in Maui too. So yeah, hey, it's early yet though. We're
go ahead.
We're still talking about college football, and we're trying to leak some college basketball into it, but it's early yet. Somebody's going to take over. I got a feeling it's Auburn. Bruce Pearl is a great coach.
Yeah, and also we got to give credit is that just how good of a coach is Matt Painter at Purdue. He loses the Player of the Year in Zach Edey, and he's got Purdue right now sitting at 8 and likely to go up even more. They climbed 5 spots in last week's poll. They're probably going to come up a little bit more this week.
Yeah, Painter's done a great job there too. I'm trying to think. Who was the other one?
Let's also remember, yes, Zach Edey was a dominant force. Got them to the national championship game last year. Were they going to win it? Probably not. With
UConn was too good.
Exactly. Just because that's just really. It shows you how great a coach can be to be able to get out of his players. Now, granted, Dan Hurley, arguably the best coach in the country, and spurn the NBA to come back and go for a three-peat. UConn's got all the talent in the world. The Maui thing is, aside here, but just it shows you that people got to remember that that Zach Edey was great. it wasn't all that Purdue had, and especially if he's got them in the top 10 out of the chute this year after losing a guy like that. It's basically like it reminds me of, and a little bit homerish here, for the teams that I grew up following. It's kind of like how Steve Lavin got UCLA back, shortly after Jim Herrick ended up losing like Tyus Edney and the O'Bannon brothers at UCLA after their 95 title.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right. He put together a hell of a roster around Zach Edey. And he didn't graduate much either. So, and look for them to be a player in the big player in the Big Ten.
But you've got Oklahoma, blue blood. They're 7-0. They climbed into the top 25 last week. North Carolina dropped 8 spots. They're 4-3. Pittsburgh coming up. Houston fell 11 spots last week. They're 4-3. So it's and then if you look just outside of the top 5, the top 25, you've got Michigan State at 26, Arkansas is at 27, Texas is at 28, Michigan's at 29, Indiana's at 31. Who else got votes here? BYU got votes. UCLA got votes. Creighton got votes. Loyola Chicago got votes. DePaul actually getting votes.
Jesus. Way in the bag now.
Yeah, Ohio State, I want to say, according to this, if I'm estimating, they're somewhere down around high 30s, but they're still getting votes. I'm still one of these weirdos that actually says, okay, well, Ohio State might be like 37th in the country. They're not 25, but, I'll actually count all the, other teams receiving votes and slot them there.
Honestly, the thing I'm looking forward to as far as Buckeye fandom besides that game is men's soccer is number 1 in the country.
And it's also going to be fun to actually see Ohio State and UCLA, Ohio State, USC.
It is.
Conference play opens in a couple of weeks here.
It's going to be very cool to see that. So what do you say we get a little bit of a halftime in as we're 123 in? The blast isn't that much. Of course, we say that all the time. But the blast actually isn't that much tonight, and we will try and get you out of here in the next little bit. But let you say 7-8 minutes?
Yeah, let's take a little bit of a break, top off our drinks, and we'll hit it back for our final content-laden segment of the year.
Sounds like a plan. See you in a minute. And we're back.
Figured we'd actually, play a little Christmas and New Year's, jumping the gun a little bit, but when in Rome,
Mariah Carey's been playing in the stores for a month.
Yeah, you completely understand this. Christmas 102.
Nice. Nice. All right, so we promised people we'd be out quick. Let's jump right to the blast, Jim.
Hey, in case you haven't noticed, and judging by the attendance, you haven't.
That's still amazing. All right, so week 14 in the NFL. Let's start in Pittsburgh. And let's move on.
Oh, God, that's good.
What more is there to say?
I had it on in the background. I didn't really care.
Bobby and I, you'll love this. You ready? This is great. And I told Steph this was going to be told tonight. So I flipped it on for 5 minutes earlier, right after the Judy touchdown. And so with dinner time on Sunday nights, we've been watching Food Network's doing a Harry Potter themed baking competition. So that's our Sunday night thing. Steph's a big Harry Potter fan. Well, Steph turns on YouTube and Bobby goes, "Are we going to watch the Browns?" And she goes, "No." And he goes, "Are we going to watch the Mets?" And she goes, "No. Who are you?" He goes, "I'm Bobby." The other thing he's doing now, if you say something, he's like, "What did you say?"
What did he say?
Basically. So, yeah, the Browns got hood stomped in Pittsburgh after giving them an ass beating a few weeks ago.
Are we ready to actually anoint Jerry Jeudy as a number one with this team with the way that he's gone off since the Amari Cooper trade? As that is one pretty ball that Justin Herbert just
hold on. We got breaking news. Juan Soto is in agreement on a 15-year, $765 million contract with the New York Mets. Alex just told me. That's insanity.
We have more breaking news. Jim will not be watching baseball next year. Michael will be handling all MLB coverage on this show effective immediately.
Well, it looks like the Big Week in Baseball show is going to be coming back very soon.
I will work on an intro while we're on hiatus.
I appreciate that. That's an AAV of $51 million. Listen,
people wonder why you can't take college football seriously with the fact that the Buckeyes have a $20 million payroll. Now you wonder why people can't take baseball seriously.
Well, in all fairness, Alabama's had a couple of $1 million payroll when they weren't allowed to pay players, so I don't want to hear it.
This is not a slight against your Mets. I mean, partially it is, but it's, somebody put a graphic up there on Facebook the other day about 5 or 6 things to fix baseball. And they said, quit changing the rules. It's like, no, leave the rules exactly the way that they are. You need to either adapt or die. Number 7, salary cap.
Here's the problem with that. The Major League Baseball Players Association is the most powerful union on the planet.
I agree.
So you'll never get that. You know what they could do, though, Jim? Salary floor. Make every team spend this much guaranteed and go from there. But again, biggest payroll doesn't automatically mean you're going to win the World Series. Look at this year, the teams that were in the NLCS. Yes, you had the 2 highest payrolls in the National League, but you had the Guardians in the American League, who, by the way, one call here, one call there. You're talking about a 7-game series and a possible Gardos-Dodgers World Series. But sorry, Alex sent me that message, so I figured we'd want to break the news online here tonight. So sorry, I'm getting an update from upstairs. Little man's got the cough going on, so yeah.
John, see what you started. Nothing but love for you, brother.
Yeah. So let's run this thing quick.
The
Baker
Rams.
had a huge day.
What's that?
Baker had a huge day.
He did. 18 of 29, 295 yards, 3 touchdowns. The Buccaneers hold serve against the hapless Raiders 28-13, and with that win, take control of the NFC South.
If he pulls off 2 consecutive division titles, I think it's time for the Browns to fold shop. The other 2 things I want to talk about this week, did you see the sign flying over MetLife Stadium today?
I did, especially with the fact of the Dolphins still keeping the playoff hunt with a 32-26 win over the Jets and officially eliminate the Jets from playoff contention as I can't even think of what to call him. The other guy who won't be named, 27 of 39, 339 yards and 1 touchdown.
Yeah. But they were talking about the Giants in that thing.
Who lost 14-11 today to the Saints as Drew Lock finally found a home. Oh my God, does that look good? Kansas City hot chicken. On a burger at the stadium. Drew Lock goes 21 of 49, 227 yards and an interception.
Not bad day for Drew Lock either.
You want to talk about guys who had a not bad day? Can we talk about the absolute fiesta that Sam Darnold had?
Yeah.
Sam Darnold goes 22 of 28 for 347 yards, 5 touchdowns as the Vikings keep pace in the NFC North with a 42-21 win over the Falcons. The Vikings are now 11-2, 6-1 at home, and only 1 game back at Detroit. But more importantly, they also stay 1 game ahead of Green Bay to be able to host one of the wild card games.
Do they play Detroit again?
The Vikings finish out, yes. The Vikings will finish out home to the Bears, at Seattle, home to Green Bay, at the Lions. That is not fun.
No. But I think with the depleted pass rush, I like Minnesota's chances. So they can sneak up and win that division if they really had a chance to.
Go ahead.
Shootout in LA between the Bills and the Rams.
As the Rams snap the Bills' 7-game win streak, although it really in the grand scheme of things, the only thing that it really mattered is that if Kansas City holds serve tonight, they'll actually put another game between them and Buffalo for the number 1 overall seed, although the Bills already have the division locked up and are right now probably looking to be the 2 seed.
Yeah, but again, beating Kansas City a few weeks ago, outside of mental edge really doesn't matter unless you end up with the 1 seed.
As Josh goes 22 of 37, 342 yards and 3 touchdowns, but Puka Nacua, 12 catches, 162 and a strike.
By the way, Josh Allen accounted for all 6 touchdowns because he ran in the other 3.
Yep.
So huge day from him. Last but not least, let's talk about
One other thing we have to talk about that game. I actually texted you and John. We actually saw the sighting of a legendary running back from Mr. Garvey's class, Balake Karoom. God, it was an entertaining as hell segment when he was on Rich Eisen earlier this year.
Yeah, it was. But the other one I wanted to talk about quickly was damn it, what was the game? San Francisco and Chicago. Rome Odunze is an absolute beast. Did you see that touchdown catch?
I did not, but I'm gonna catch the highlights here in a little bit.
Dude, wait till you see how he got both feet down. That's all I'm gonna say. It was a thing of fucking beauty.
And Rome Odunze, 4 catches, 42 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he was targeted 5 times. So 4 catches on 5 targets. Caleb Williams, 17 of 23, only $134, but 2 touchdowns, but a passer rating of 116. You don't have to light up 300-400 yards a game as long as you've actually got that level of accuracy.
No, you don't, but
I think their problem was the fact that he got knocked on his ass 7 times in this game.
Well, their offensive line has been a sieve for years.
Exactly.
And if they could have fixed this 3 quarterbacks ago, they'd probably be a better team. No disrespect, Alex, but I think you agree with us.
Other scores around the league, wrapping up real quick. The game that nobody cares about, the Jags moved to 3-10 and dropped the Titans to 3-10. Jags win 10-6. We actually had Saquon Barkley set the Eagles' all-time single-season rushing record, 20 carries, 124 yards, as the Eagles moved to 11-2 with a 22-16 win over the hapless Panthers. We actually saw Seattle take control of the NFC West with a 30-18 win over the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona. Kyler Murray, 25 of 38 for 259 and 2 scores. Zach Charbonnet, 22 carries, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns for Seattle. And Arizona still mathematically alive in that. Currently, we have the Chiefs holding a 13-7 lead with about just under 6 minutes to go in the third quarter against the LA Chargers. The Chiefs just punted. The Chargers take over 1st and 10 at their own 26. And then tomorrow night, we have Bengals Cowboys in a game that nobody outside of Dallas or Cincinnati are even planning on watching, if not paying attention to at all.
One quick question, and then I want to move on to Jacob Trouba. Do you feel a little bad for Joe Burrow? Yeah, I mean, but seriously, have you seen his numbers?
His numbers are great. You know, if he had any kind of offensive line or defense, they actually
That's what I'm saying.
They would be in the hunt. But what's pissing everyone off more? The fact that Cincinnati with all this talent is this bad, or the fact that Pittsburgh with half the talent is this good?
I'm here so I won't get fined.
Controversial take on our last actual show of the year. I think Lamar Jackson's a little overrated.
Things that fall in water are wet. The sky is blue. The Pope's Catholic. No shit.
It's still just amazing the fact that you had 6 teams on buys with 4 games left to go for everybody else after this week. And let's be honest, 4 of them were teams that everybody would want to watch.
Mm-hmm.
The Broncos, Commanders, Ravens, and Texans were all off, in addition to the Colts and the Patriots. Patriots, nobody really cares. The Colts are middle, but the other 4 of those teams are all in playoff position.
Agreed. By the way, Cooper DeJean had the best tackle of the year last week.
I will pull that one up. I really, after the halfway point of the Browns game, I did not watch any other football until the Rams game came on, until the Rams and Bills came on. I didn't watch any other highlights. I was all footballed out from Friday and Saturday night with the college games, and then put the Cavs on for a little bit, and then had to get ready for the show. Taped a sports note about our next topic here. Yeah, I think I'm actually tuning out football for the next couple of days, maybe even the next week and a half.
Yeah, I'm really going to be until the playoff. I'm going to be Cavs only. Even though they lost today, like you said, you're expecting them to lose. Sorry, I'm answering questions. You expected them to have a stinker, especially with Evan Mobley not playing. Guys like Okoro didn't play.
I mean,
Not a
Mobley
bad story.
didn't play, but there's no way he was going to follow up 41 points career high, the very next day on basically the fact that the second they wrapped up that game at 4:00 yesterday, they were on a plane less than an hour later to get down to South Beach.
Yeah. He was unreal on Saturday. So Jacob Trouba, captain of the New York Rangers, is traded to Anaheim.
Correct. For another defenseman, an up-and-coming defenseman, and a 4th-round pick in 2025. Trouba was actually still on the hook for his contract was $8 million guaranteed this and next year as part of the trade, because Trouba had a partial no trade and no movement clause that he had about 12 or 13 teams as the Chargers just tied the game. And it looks like it's raining pretty good. There's mist all over the camera. And that's going to be coming here probably tomorrow or Wednesday, or tomorrow or Tuesday. Wonderful. At least it's better than snow. But the caveat is that, yes, the Rangers lose their captain, but they save $6 million of this year's salary out of the $8 million because the Rangers just hit the quarter pole. But the Ducks are also going to pay the entirety of next year's contract as well. And then he's a UFA in the summer of 2026. Now, the Ducks still actually have $12 million in salary cap room. And Michael, you and I talked about this yesterday. The $6 million that they saved, where did that money go?
Igor Shesterkin.
8 years, $92 million, and 11.5 AAV for the next 8 years. I want to say the majority of that is guaranteed, and you have your lockdown goaltender signed until he's in his mid-30s now.
Yeah, because you would send me a text about Trouba, and then I sent you the thing about Shesterkin signing the extension, which we talked about when we did our NHL preview. We didn't know what the Rangers were going to do. Well, now we see what they ended up doing. Jim, could they be sandbagging and getting Trouba back in 2 years, or do you think his days in New York are just done?
I think his days in New York are done because there's a part of me that thinks, and I wrote about this in the sports note, is that we've seen captains get traded before in the middle of a season. I don't know if I've seen one happen this early, because typically it's either at the quarter pole or it's like at the end of the year, or somebody like how Steven Stamkos just didn't actually, Tampa didn't elect to keep his contract. I've seen it several times with my Blues over the years. We saw it last year at the trade deadline where the Sabres traded Captain Kyle Okposo to Florida, and then Okposo goes out, wins the Stanley Cup, and then retires like 3 days later. And was a valuable veteran piece of that championship team, even though he didn't play very much in the finals because of how loaded they were. But this is leading me to think that there might have been something else at play here for Trouba to request the trade, like I guess earlier in the week. The Rangers ruled him out of Friday night's game at about like 11 a.m. in the morning, somewhere around, in that space, maybe up until like noon. So they rule him out for the game against Pittsburgh. And then there's the rumor on the table of the trade to Anaheim, who right now is going nowhere. Anaheim is the 4th worst record in the NHL. And then you get all the money moving around, and then the trade becomes final on Saturday.
There's something else there. There's got to be. I don't understand why. I don't understand why they do it. I mean, they went so far last year with Trouba. What, Eastern Conference Finals, right?
Correct.
Did they think they couldn't afford Shesterkin if they kept him?
There's part of me that thinks absolutely. There's also another part of me that I don't know if they were tired of some of his antics because he's been fined 5 times in his career. He's been suspended twice since 2018. Each time was only 2 games, though. But really, since 2018, he's been fined over $130,000. I mean, he was fined in the playoffs last year against Florida. Remember that cheap elbow to Evan Rodriguez that you and I both talked about on, I believe, on this show, certainly on the phone, that everyone thought that he was going to get suspended for a game or 2, and then they actually just hit him with the $5,000 maximum fine, but no time served, so to speak.
Yeah. I don't know. It did strike me as fishy. But then I thought I was trying to have the salary cap thought of they freed the money up to pay the goalie, but I don't know. Who's the captain now? Is it Kreider?
That's just it. Is that this is certainly not uncharted territory for the Rangers, because the Rangers, before Trouba, because he was named captain in the summer of 2021, so he's been the captain for about 2.25 years now. The Rangers traded captain Ryan McDonagh at the trade deadline in 2018 to Tampa. McDonagh goes and wins 2 cups with the Bolts, plays there a couple more years, has 2 years in Nashville, and then comes back on a 1-year deal to Tampa. But the 4 seasons between McDonagh getting traded and Trouba getting named, they didn't run with a captain. They instead ran with 6 alternate captains, and you can only actually have 3 per game. So they would rotate who the 3 alternate captains would be every month. Is this something that they're going to end up running the rest of the year? It's very rare that you actually see. I think probably the most obvious case is when the Kings traded Gretzky to the St. Louis Blues, that they immediately named him captain for half a season at that particular point, and then went out in the first round. But I don't see the Rangers really naming a captain unless they're really that high on, like, an Adam Fox and Alex Lafreniere. A couple other names I was thinking of is maybe Capo Caco. But I just don't know if they're that high on Caco. There was 1 or 2 other names that I was thinking about. But I just don't know how committed they are to some of these guys. Because Zibanejad, I could think Chris Kreider, but Kreider's 33.
Yeah.
And lastly, Franz Wagner. Something's going on there in Orlando.
They don't like oblique muscles, I guess.
This is the same injury, and for those of you who don't know, earlier today it was announced that Franz Wagner, the star forward of the Orlando Magic, is going to be out indefinitely with a torn oblique, and this is the same injury that Paolo Banchero had a few weeks ago, and Banchero is going to be out until right around the All-Star break, they're thinking.
If not longer.
If not longer, yes.
But listen, they're a scrappy team. They're going to be in it. They're very good. But Jim, we got to wrap it up, but we still have one more thing to do.
Would you shut up and just push the button already?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
It's the YZ Translator on the Wise Guys Sports Show.
I'm forever unclean.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the final is it the final translator of the year?
I think we'll do one next week.
Okay, so the second to last translator of 2024. As we come into the last segment of the show, and it is the best segment of the show because it's the last segment of the show. And as I normally would break down ghosts of translators past, so like where I went with that, I
Well
prefer
played.
to go with the I prefer to go with the Chiron of translator present. So do you know how people, when they travel, they do the write the states down game, or that's Steph's game, and I'm reminded of it every single time.
We all have a little bit of NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One in all of us.
She's more Fast and Furious, but yes, I agree.
My mother got a full taste of that on Thanksgiving, where she was saying we were going to get there way too early, and she says, I need to slow down. I said, I'm doing the speed limit. She says, you need to go slower. Avon to Cleveland Avon to Mayfield Heights should not take 32 minutes.
Nice. Impressive.
And I never got the car, and it never went above 70. 5.
Is there no one on the road? 5.
Yeah, when on the way out, there were maybe about 50 cars. On the way coming home, I think we saw about 12.
Jesus. So, James, it is incumbent upon me to give you the first name of the night, and I am going to go. I'm going to go here. Jim, your first name in tonight's YZ Translator is Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski.
Raw dogging on a raw deal. How much worse could this get? There's people saying he's dead man walking. There's people actually saying, see actually how productive they can be, when you don't have an albatross around your throat.
You know who the leader in average per game yards through the air is this year? It is Jameis Winston. That's sad. Who you got for me?
Michael, your first name in the YZ Translator tonight, we didn't name him by name, but we talked about him on the phone earlier today. Iowa State running back. I'm sorry, Arizona State running back, Cam Scatabo.
Newest member of the bloodline.
Boy, I wish John Madden was around, because this kid is a human bowling ball.
He really is.
The stat that I think I told you in the first half yesterday, he had 140 rushing yards. He had over 100 yards after contact and 2 touchdowns.
Is it just me, or is he the second coming of Peyton Hillis?
I think that one game basically bumped him up from being a day 3 draftee to a day 2. And I've never been a proponent of drafting a running back, in the first round. I think Ashton Jeanty is going to be a special player. I think Ashton Jeanty will be a top 10 pick by somebody this year, even though he is a little bit undersized. I think Cam Scatabo is going to fit himself very, very nicely on somebody's roster in the spring.
Agreed. Who you got for me there, bud? Or it's my turn for you. I'm going to go here, and I hope you'll indulge me with a wise ass answer. But Jim, your next and final entry in tonight's YZ Translator is New York Mets owner Steve Cohen.
Rusty cunt bucket. Shut up.
He's trying to be Steinbrenner. I'm sorry, you got to win like 37 more championships before anyone else even like considers that. It's, you're the little brother that actually now kind of like wants to push your way into your big brother's room when they go off to college and everything to try and play with some of their stuff, thinking you're not going to get caught. He's basically New Jersey trying to actually play with all of New York's toys at this point.
You have said some disrespectful things to me on this show. That might be the biggest one, comparing my team to that absolute whole of a state. I wouldn't even let my couch go to Jersey.
Unless it was going to get lit on fire at a Rutgers, frat party.
Not even then.
Michael, to close us out tonight, you know him, you love him. Your last name in the YZ translator, I can't wait for this one. Paul Feinbaum.
That hillbilly inbred son of a bitch. I cannot fucking stand him. Yes, I have the same hairdo as he does now, but I would put a wig on instead of looking like that motherfucker, okay? He went to the University of Tennessee. That's why I want the Buckeyes to stomp a fucking mud hole in them and walk it dry. I'm okay with winning. Exactly. I'm okay with the Bucks winning a game had Feinbaum not going to Tennessee. He went to Tennessee, beat his ass. Beat their ass. Send Josh Heupel back to Oklahoma, where he belongs, and get your ass to the fucking Rose Bowl. Because your coach ain't getting on the plane if you don't.
Ow.
That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, I'm going to deal with something like that upstairs. So I'm going to make my portion of the closing quickly because I got to head up for dad duty. But next week, episode 95, the holiday free-for-all, Sunday night, the 15th at 8:30. It is our 2024 season finale because once 2025 hits, we are on the fast track to 100. And are we going to do the YZs for 100?
We might end up doing that. We'll have more information about how long our hiatus is. We're thinking of maybe coming back, maybe not the first of the year, but maybe take a month off, maybe come back, middle of January. But
right before the
free for all 3, that to 8:30 time is tentative. We might even start a little bit earlier. I am trying to convince Mike to let Mrs. Rican and Little Rican on the show. There may be presents being opened that night. We're going to talk. We really are not going to have very much sports to talk about in that first segment at all. It could be one of our shortest shows of the year, but it's basically we're going to look back. We're going to play some of our favorite YZ moments. We might play a couple of translators in there. We'll have a translator. Anybody, friends, family, whoever, you want to come on, shoot us a message, join us in the chat. Come on. We're just going to have some fun.
Absolutely. And I'm going to take my leave here. Jim, I'll talk to you tomorrow probably.
Good night, Mike.
Take care, guys.
And everybody else, we want to thank you guys very much for joining us for another great year of the Wise Guys Sports Show. Again, next week, Holiday Free for All 3 will be our season finale. We will talk NFL is the only meaningful thing. We're going to have NBA regular season, unless something dramatic happens, not going to be newsworthy. Same thing with the NHL. The college football bowls will officially have opened up, but the playoffs won't be until we're actually on hiatus. So we hope everyone will be able to join us then. But again, for my partner Mike Martinez, we will actually see you guys next week. Everybody, take care. And stay safe because I hear there's going to be some inclement weather coming this week. So everyone, we'll see you guys next week. Bring your presents, bring your drinks, and bring your attitude.
site.